Okay, where we left off, we had done the most infinitesimal part of programming, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at the organization of the code. Now, I have found that one of the key assets of using a framework is not just the clarity with which it brings, but one of the hard parts of code is going back later and understanding what you did and why. Commenting is always helpful, but also organizing your code. For example, if I can keep my views separate, when I'm working on a view, I don't have to think, oh, where else might I have put that code or made changes here. So it's just a nice way of keeping your data organized. So the first thing is we want to look at our organization here. All of our code is under this protected folder here. The config here, which is main.php, which we're looking at here, sets up some of our initial configurations, and we're going to make some changes here. But I'm going to change this. I'm going to delete this console here and this test here. I don't use them, and I'm just going to get rid of them. So let's look at quickly here. Remember, we talked about model view controllers. So look at our models here. Now, these models came as a part of the initial building of the web app. We got a contact form and a login form model, which are interesting because they're hard-coded. They're not connected to any database, and eventually those should be replaced and connected to a database, but we're going to leave those in that alone for now. Views, you see right here, and under views, you can see there's layouts and site. Now this site has exactly to do, and the naming is not incidental or accidental, it actually has to do with the controller here, site controller. And that naming is exact. Site relates to this view site. Controller has to be there. And we'll talk more about that later, about why that naming convention is exact that way. So we looked at our models here, which are fake models really, and we looked at our views here, and we'll talk more about the layouts and the whatnot, and we looked at our controllers. Now we also have components, and components are essentially controllers that are not attached to a model or a view. It's more of like subroutines that we need and classes that we need and other parts, but they're not attached to a specific view or model. Okay, now we've gone through that. We have extensions here which end up being components that other people have written that you can use. What we want to do right now is we want to look at this configuration file, and we're going to make some changes, and we're going to just step through some changes. This is our base path, and the name, which is used throughout the program, and in our initial view is used for the title. Here we are uploading all the models and the components, so that when we add a new model or a new component, it gets uploaded. Now here's some modules. Modules are different from models, and unfortunately they're just named very close. This module here, and we're going to add our own later, is the G module. This G module allows us to create components of this program very easily. So what I'm going to do here is just enable it by uncommenting and change the word to pass. Now when I deploy this, I would absolutely not load this module. You don't want to accidentally allow someone to make changes to your website. Here we also got some components. One is URL Manager, which is very critical. We're going to talk about that later, but I'm going to leave it commented for now until we talk about it. And then we've got our database. Now the default one that they have here is the SQLite. Well, we're going to get rid of that because we're going to go with MySQL. So I've uncommented MySQL and deleted the SQLite. And remember that we have our database over here, Amazon, with these tables here. So we're going to say database name is Amazon. And I haven't set up any passwords or anything for users, so root and no password are the defaults there. When you push this out to the live server, you may need to make some changes there. just a heads up on that. And then an error handler and a log, okay, and that's it. And then we got this admin email here, which I don't ever use, but it's another place to put parameters that would be used throughout your program. Okay, so what have we done? We've enabled the G module and we've connected to the database. Those two actually go together, and we're going to use that right now. So I save this, and here I am on my site. Now, everything is index or related to index. So we say index.html, and here we are right here. And now we want to give it a route, and we'll do that by saying that the route is equal to G default login. Now, we're going to change this later, but what this says is go to the G controller, and again, that's a component in this, that one in our regular code. Go to the action default with the parameter login. That becomes more important later on. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I am going to change the way this URL looks now so that I can get used to it. What we really want to write here is I just want to write G. I don't want to write all of this route and everything like that. And that's the way I want all of our program to be. So let's go back to this, and the way we do this is with URL Manager. Okay, so I'm going to uncomment enabling URL Manager, taking the top and the bottom comment away, and just go with these defaults right now. We'll talk more about them later because it gets pretty complex. And now what I can do is I could just say, I could just type in G, and it takes me right here. Now, there's no reason to have this index.php, so we could get rid of that too. And the way we do that is we just set this parameter right here, show script name equals false. I'll save that. And now when I go back to here, I can just type G. And it takes me to here automatically. Okay, that's a lot here that we've done without really doing anything. And I do want to do one thing before we end this video. But what I've done is I've enabled URL Manager, and then I've gone into this G module here. Now you see I changed the password here to pass. So let's actually log in and see what we have here. Here I can generate some code automatically. So what do we got here? We talked about what models are, and I can generate a model based on connections to my database. I can generate a whole CRUD controller. Remember, this is create, read, update, and delete. Or I can just generate a controller here. If I do the CRUD, I'm not only going to get the controller, but I'll get all of the standard views that then can be modified. But I'm going to do something else here. I'm going to create a module. Now, the reason you have modules is that in our e-commerce site, we have the site that the customers would look at, and then we have the back-end site where we would add products and do administrative work. So I'm going to do that first, is add a back-end, because one of the back-ends we want to add, or one of the abilities we want to have in our back-end, is be able to add users and to give roles for those users. So the first thing we're going to do, this is a module, and I can call this anything: back office, admin, administration. Let's go with administration. No point in having a short word there. Okay, I'll preview it, and it says, okay, we're going to create a module administration with a default controller and a default view. Okay, that's what they said, and I'm going to say, yep, go ahead and generate those. Now, fortunately, it tells me here, look it, we've created the module, but you have to add it to the system. Love the fact that it tells me that. So I'm going to copy that. And you see here where we got our G module. Well, we could just put it right there. Now look at also here. It's created this module folder with the administration. And it's got our controller, which is a default controller, and our default view. Again, this folder is named specifically for that default in front of the controller. Okay. Now, let's see if this works here. So we should be able to go to administration, and sure enough, it allows me to go to this administration, and this is the default view for that, a completely separate module. Now in the next one, we'll start adding models and components and things like that. But that, I just wanted to get used to the URL manager and the G tool.